Hello, everyone. Welcome to Go Campus. This is Ashwini with you. We are honored to have Dr. Sonali Kirde on our show, a medical doctor, entrepreneur, investor, and healthcare innovator. She is the founder and CEO of HealthSpec 360 and Elevate, focused on mentoring doctors and advising health tech startups. With the experience at major global pharmaceutical companies like GSK, Merck, and Takeda, she blends clinical expertise with entrepreneurship. Dr. Sonali also champions women's leadership as chairperson of Fempreneur India, Nagpur chapter, and also serves as independent director at IICA. A very warm welcome to you, Doctor. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you, Ashwini. Thank you so much for having me here. And it's my pleasure and my privilege to be a part of your show. And first of all, let me congratulate you for all the hard work, for all the efforts, and for all the intent and the courageous platform that you are running. I think it will really help all the medicos across the globe. And congratulations for that and all the best wishes.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. Doctor, to start with, could you give our audience a brief introduction about yourself so that they can get to know you a little bit more?
Sure, sure. So, Ashwini, I'm a medical doctor by profession. I've started my journey from Nagpur, born and brought up in Nagpur. I completed my MBBS from Government Medical College, Nagpur. And post my MBBS, I worked in the rural healthcare for roughly for around 3 years, wherein I was a part of not only the as a medical officer but the chief medical officer, wherein you have to handle patients, medical legal activities, then administration, finances, and all sort of pressures. And after my journey in rural healthcare, I wanted a stream, I wanted a field which should open a gateway to all the subjects, not restricted to one therapy area. And clinical pharmacology, and also I'm a very passionate pharmacologist, so clinical pharmacology gave me that opportunity to get exposure of the entire spectrum of medicine, right from dermatology or cardiology, nephrology. So basically, it's a gateway to all the subjects. And I pursued my MD in clinical pharmacology and therapeutics from MGIMS Sevagram, which is in Varda. And after my MD in pharmacology, I joined pharmaceutical industry. As you have already mentioned, I started with MSD, Merck Sharp and Dome, then GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, and Takeda was my recent organization. So in all these years, I enjoyed the journey. The profile is very diverse, but diversity is something that I'm personally very passionate about. And while working in the rural healthcare, I could see, to be honest, I loved clinical practice, the patient connection, the human stories, the impact that we build, handling one case at a time and impacting one life at a time. But somewhere along the way, I realized there are many issues, there are many problems, there are many hurdles that healthcare is facing. And if we are not able to translate these medical insights, what I could gather during my service, translating into the viable scalable healthcare solutions, then there is no point in observing all those insights. So I realized that by working in these areas, I should be able to address those issues and should be able to build the solutions which will help not only the rural but the urban population, and overall benefiting patients, helping them for improving their lives.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. That was a brief about yourself. Doctor, now you started out in clinical practice as a medical officer. Now, you said you're passionate about pharma, but what drew you towards the pharma world? I mean, what made you take MD pharmacology? Something that gave you that, okay, I have to get into this?
Yes, this question is very routinely asked by many mentees, by many students, those who are MBBS and want to see what is the best branch, maybe as per their personal and professional goals. So pharmacology, basically, as I said, I was very passionate. I am very passionate for drug research, molecular discovery. Then impacting millions of lives. Now with handling patients or seeing patients, knowing their pain points, addressing those, managing a case will impact one life at a time. But working in pharma companies or working in such sector will definitely give you an opportunity to impact millions of lives because they are working at a global level. So by pursuing MD in pharmacology, the pharma companies, for them the straight choice is the MD, a person who has pursued their MD in pharmacology. There are many opportunities within pharmaceutical companies also. So that was the reason I wanted to pursue my MD in pharmacology. It will give me the 360-degree approach. Also, not only the technical skills or the knowledge, the medical knowledge, but also the business acumen that I could develop over a period of time by being a part of the core strategic team. So I think that is the beauty of this degree, and it has many avenues, many opportunities, not only to work in one pocket within a country, impacting the entire country as well as globally. So that was a clear cut choice for me, and for personality like me who want to go beyond and have a larger impact, playing on my strengths. I think that became a right choice. So I always tell people, students, medicos, try to evaluate yourself, introspect what are your strengths, and play on your strengths rather than following someone or following a mad rush. That is something which is very important.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I mean, that's really true because this is currently the NEET PG time, and counseling
Yeah.
is yet to start, and doctors have already started looking to what option should I give, how should I do my preference order. So many doctors do ask us, because we also support doctors for NEET PG counseling process,
Lovely.
because there are some who are very sure I want only this, but there are many who are like, I'm confused between this, how should I put my order.
True.
And doctors also have this clinical specialities, they feel that is what most of them want to. In
Correct. Yeah.
non-clinical, how will the future be and all that. that's
Correct.
that's actually my last question in the podcast. What I'm going to ask you about, what is your word for those for the doctors who are looking for pharma this year. Maybe I'll cover it up in the end. So for doctors listening to this podcast, please stay till the end to know why you should choose pharma. We are going to cover that question because we know we're getting this question quite often from doctors now, understanding its NEET PG time.
Yes. And just to add to this, Ashwini, the transition from clinical practice, the rural clinical practice, to the pharma industry in all these years by working in these multinational companies with the British background or the British base, UK based, US based, and Japan based, all these three companies, it gave me that deep exposure of, how evidence work, what is the importance of evidence generation, what is the importance of strategy, and how to bridge that innovation and strategy coming together to improve access of medicine and improving outcomes of patients. So I think that is the beauty of this particular degree, not only the pharmaceutical industry, but there are so many other avenues. And I am driving a campaign called as Docpreneurship, wherein we tell doctors to become docpreneurs or try something new, bring innovation into the health science or into the medicine while practicing. So pharma industry also gives you that approach of improving your skills. Apart from your technical skills, there are many other skills which are required and which are definitely get improved once you join pharma industry by pursuing in pharmacology.
Great, doctor. Doctor, now as a medical officer to pharma expert, how did all this evolve into entrepreneurship now? What again triggered you to get into to do so much at this age? I can see a lot of talks, or you've been part of many shows. How did this trigger happen, doctor?
Yes. So Ashwini, while working in all these areas, I came in contact with few founders who were from the non-medical backgrounds, some engineers, those who were very passionate to build something in healthcare. So they were very good as far as the tech was concerned, but they were lacking the medical insights. They wanted insights from doctor who can help them, guide them, validate their idea, and also make them understand whether this idea will really work or not. So from this, and giving them the unbiased opinion about the idea, from right from the ideation level up to the upscaling level. Now within few months, because they also have a very small community, I got popular within the engineering colleges across India, and I used to get a lot of requests, can you please help us in, this is the idea, what are your thoughts. So people used to come for my feedbacks, for my inputs, and for the advice. Now of course this I used to do pro bono basis, completely free, but I realized this is the need gap. Now people are want to do a lot of things, but they are lacking that guidance, lacking that mentorship and the proper support from the health field. Now they could go to doctors from top cities or the top guys or the top leaders of the industry, but the problem is they don't have enough time to guide. They don't have enough, I would say they cannot give time to all these founders. So there I was very fortunate. I came in contact with these startups and I started developing interest, and I realized this is something that I should do, because if we are not able to support them enough, many startups may die. So that transition from pharmaceutical industry, and after working in pharmaceutical industry, of course, the I also developed as a person from rural to global. So that entire spectrum I saw, and I realized there are many areas which need to be addressed, but one person or one set of people will not be able to do. So why don't you become a partner or a channel to support all these startups, and entrepreneurship becomes a natural choice. it becomes a natural next step wherein, after getting all those skill sets, the developing the strategy, developing the business acumen, understanding what is the importance of legalities, what is the importance of regulatory affairs, why there is an importance of keeping ethics and compliance at the center and having that patient centric approach, is something that I was not very well aware when I was only practicing. I realized this when I was working in pharma industry. So this medical affairs, which is the department where I was working, it's like a center point wherein you have to work very closely with your ethics team, compliance team, legal team, your regulatory team, your sales and marketing team, your pharmacovigilance, clinical trial, clinical development team. So basically, that gave me the 50,000 feet bird's view, what's happening right from the grassroots rural area to the globally, and how we can actually connect the dots and help people. So I always wanted to use all this learning to create something that bridge this gap between the clinical knowledge to the real world impact. And that's how the HealthSpec 360 Venture Solutions Private Limited and Elevate came into existence. Both are my passion projects, but these are the platform that empowers doctors, life science professionals, and founders to build startups, to innovate, to think, out of the box and upscale in the healthcare, keeping patient at center. You will see, I'm talking a lot about this patient centric approach, but this is something that makes healthcare business different from other businesses.
So thank you for that, doctor. Now you've successfully transitioned from being a doctor to building platforms like HealthSpec 360 and Elevate. What were some of the key challenges you faced during your journey and how did you overcome them?
So, Ashwini, thanks for this question. Challenges were many, but the biggest challenge I would say was the mindset. Both my own mindset as well as the world around me. Because if we call doctor, so people expect a doctor to see patients, either joining academics, joining a medical college as a faculty, or conducting clinical research and all these clinical development activities, or starting their own clinic or clinical practice, joining hospitals, basically patient management. Now, when we talk about entrepreneurship and trying to do something different, obviously the biggest challenge was the mindset. First, I had to work on my mindset. Is this my degree is not the end point. It's actually the beginning of everything. It give me the skills, it's giving me the right skill set and the right approach for patient management. So many a times it happens that doctors, especially doctor group, is very close group. They are not very flexible in terms of discussing their ideas, their queries, their concerns with the outside community. We call it as non-medical community. So the first thing that we have to work is on our mindset, how open we are in terms of discussions, in terms of addressing the issues, in terms of incorporating cooperatively, involving everyone into the system, because unless we work on the system, we will not able to change the system. And pharma industry gave me that approach. I was not like this before, but pharma company, because there you have MBA, you have finance people, you have doctors, you have variety of people or experts there. So that made my journey much simpler, much easier. And also I could work on my mindset, and moving from a very secure, high paying, respected clinical practice wherein you are actually impacting patients, to the very unpredictable world of business. It's not easy. You face skepticism, you face self doubt, you also have to do a lot of unlearning what you used to do. But the entrepreneurship requirements are different. You have to be open, you have to be collaborative, you have to be cooperative, you also have to be inclusive in nature, keeping yourself not at the front. I would say a good leader will always lead from the back. So that is something I always believe, that doctors can become great docpreneurs or great entrepreneurs only thing if they have this analytical mindset, discipline, and also that innovative approach in whatever clinical practice they are doing. Many people, they ask me, doctors ask me, do I need to leave my clinical practice and start something in the startup space? No, there is no need. Whatever you are doing, in whatever space you are working, try to identify what are the issues that you are facing as as a doctor. Also try to address the patient pain points, because we have all this exposure, you can easily relate to that. And finding solution, addressing patient pain points, and making your life also simpler, keeping empathy, that makes the great leaders beyond clinical roles. So I kept learning. I read a lot about business strategy, try to understand various types of leaderships, then digital health, then what is there in the innovation space, how the startup ecosystem is working. Because for me, there are very few doctors, medical doctors, who are actually into the startup entrepreneurial ecosystem. Many of them, they are from different fields. Of course, engineering colleges and engineering institutions, they are very pro innovation, they are very much into startups. But medical colleges, medical university, they are still lacking this. In fact, there are very few universities in India, they have something called as entrepreneurial cell or an incubator. So it's very important for us to to put ourselves or expose yourself to the challenging environment, and surrounded myself with like-minded people or with people who were doing good and having that collaborative approach, who could believe in the vision. So each challenge became like a stepping stone, and that's what I tell every clinician: your medical training doesn't limit you. In fact, it equips you, and equips you to lead in ways you haven't imagined yet. So don't consider your degree as the last solution or the last stop. Consider it as a gateway or opening to so many opportunities. And we are underutilizing our potential. It's important, and every degree has potential. It's just that we need to find what best and how best and different we can do, remaining in the field, helping patients and supporting them.
Great, Doctor. I think that's really nice what you said. Many engineering colleges, they do have entrepreneurship cell, but we don't
Yes.
see this in medical colleges because for Go Campus World, we've started approaching institutions. The
Mhm.
response is very cold compared to other institutions because, as you said, that innovation is still not there in the medical universities.
For us, innovation means writing papers, publications, evidence generation, conducting studies, clinical trials. But yes, that is also a part of research. But innovation in true sense, or especially, I would say entrepreneurship, other than traditional entrepreneurship, the innovative entrepreneurship requires aggression. It requires problem solving approach. It requires something, a solution which should be easily available, accessible, viable, sustainable, creating business but at the same time impacting lives. So that particular mindset is missing in our medical faculty, also in our universities also, but slowly have started picking up. And recently I was very surprised and very happy to know my home university, that is Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, based out of Nashik, they had invited me as a speaker and as a panelist. So I came to know they do have an incubation center called as Disha, and that will actually a great step for the medicos, at least across Maharashtra. And there are very few, they do exist within India. But if you talk about engineering, every IIT, they have ECell. And in fact, private colleges and private universities, they also have a lot of incubators and accelerators. So that is something, a message to the universities, medical universities within India, I would like to highlight here.
So let's say if I'm a doctor watching this podcast today, how does Health Spec 360 or Elevate help me? Can you just give us brief about it?
Yeah. So, as I said, Elevate is my passion project. I come from a background wherein I am the first gen doctor. I never had enough mentorship or enough guidance from any of the people around me. Majority of them, they were in government services, and that too from different backgrounds. Now, when I started my journey, I wanted to become a doctor because I was a bright student and it was my dad's dream. Ultimately, became my dream. But I didn't know how to become a doctor. Even I was not aware there is something called as entrance that do exist at that point in time. I'm talking about 2005, and then I came to know that I have to clear this exam. I was just focusing on my exam, that is 12th standard, but I didn't know that this entrance that I'll have to cross and then I'll become doctor. So that was kind of ignorance, I would say, or lack of awareness that I had. And at very early age and stage, I realized that mentorship is something which is very crucial, especially people coming from tier 2 cities, coming from rural areas. The talent knows no boundaries, but we also have to address the unserved but most deserving people. So for that, the right mentorship by the right people at the right time is something which is very important. I realized this much earlier, and I had already had decided whenever I get an opportunity in life, I would definitely would like to do this, work in this field, so that I become the source of inspiration to others, and I become the source of knowledge, or maybe I should be able to share my experience and exposure with all the folks who are actually looking for something. So Elevate came into the picture. Elevate was born with this passion because I, anyways, have mentored more than 200 medicos. As I was saying, for Saturday, Sundays were parked only for guidance and for mentoring.
Very nice.
Somehow, I don't know, they used to get my contact and, ma'am, please guide me for this and which branch and all of that. So I used to do that, and I realized this is, I'm getting a lot of sense of satisfaction and happiness ki, wow, I could help four students today, and then they are in touch. So then I thought, entrepreneurship also, why it is very good and very interesting, is it doesn't restrict you. You can apply all your creativity. You can take the responsibility of your success as well as your failure. So it doesn't stop you from trying, from experimenting, and from achieving all your goals and pursuing your dreams. And that's why Elevate was designed to help doctors, not only doctors but the life science professionals. Because we are getting a lot of requests from PhDs, from MScs, from dentists, physiotherapists, then Ayurveda doctors, MBBS, MD, DM, DNBs, and all of those. So basically, to see possibilities, what is there beyond traditional work, beyond traditional clinical practice, beyond that white coat, whether into pharmaceutical industry, or it could be into some health tech startups, or it could be into having your own business, or into various options within the pharma companies, or you can start something on your own. So we guide them not only the technical things which are required, but also on the skills, the soft skills, because doctors, as I said, is a shy community. Doctors are very bad as far as the marketing is concerned. They always need one marketeer to bring patients and to upscale their hospital business as well. That is a fact. But if we have not an MBA, so for our finances, like, ask anything inside body what's happening, we'll be able to answer. But finances is like Hindi mein there is a saying, kala akshar bhais barabar. So we are very poor in that. So because it doesn't, our training doesn't cover how to market, and how to, doesn't cover how to sell something. So those skill sets are very important, right? From your negotiation skills, your networking skills, your communication skills, your decision making skills, your training skills, and all the skills are important. And that's why Elevate, we train doctors, we train life science professionals from the career perspectives in their technical skills, as well as the soft skills which are required to pursue various other avenues post their degrees or their qualifications. We conduct workshops which are face to face. There are many requests for online, but I'm not a huge fan of virtual thing. So face to face workshops wherein we have mentoring sessions, we have one to one guidance. We invite speakers, top leaders from pharmaceutical industry of experience more than 2-3 decades, and those who are sharing their expertise and their exposure and experience with our medicals, with a young crowd, addressing all the issues. That is where the Elevate where, and we also help them understand where they fit the most. So it's a very customized approach, because every individual is different. And so what is your personal strengths and your professional goals, keeping everything in consideration, we guide them and help them. So HealthSpec 360, as I was mentioning, when I was attending the startup events as a jury, as a speaker, as a panelist, I realized that there is a lot of myths, a lot of misconceptions that people are having as far as the healthcare business is concerned. So healthcare business, I was mentioning, is very different from other sectors, because you cannot expect quick wins. You cannot expect something to turn your revenue or generate the revenue within few years. It takes time. It's a very patient business. At the same time, you have to envision whether that problem really do exist, and the solution that you're offering is actually serving the purpose or not. So I came in contact with many founders, and I thought that this will be a platform wherein we can bring investors, we can bring founders, we can bring innovators, we can also have premium institutions and multiple incubators, accelerators. In fact, I'm also planning to make it more broader, so that all these factors, experts coming together, providing that platform to build a scalable business for founders, especially for healthcare. So exclusively for health, and not for the career growth, but I would say for creating that value driven healthcare innovations, which are truly impacting the startup system, especially in health.
Very nice, Doctor. Doctor, I see that you're also a startup judge, right? So, what are some common mistakes founders make in healthcare ventures, Doctor? I'm sure you would have been part of many shows. So, do you want to point out some faults, some mistakes which doctors
Yes,
do?
yes, definitely. So, Ashwini, the first thing I see is the idea. Many a times they think that the idea is very unique, and I tell them, yeah, it need not be your idea will be the out of the world or something you are doing for the first time. There are many people who might be thinking about it, but whether that idea has been validated or not clinically is something which is very important. Unless you validate it clinically, from the right stakeholders. It could be if the user is doctor, end user is doctor, you have to validate it from the doctor whether this application will really serve the purpose or not. If the end users are patient, have you taken the feedbacks? Or if it is a hospital, have you taken feedback from few hospitals? So all this clinical validation is missing as far as the first mistake that I see. The second, the common mistake that I see is considering regulatory affairs as a standby, or maybe they park it for the last ke dekhenge baad mein. But here, regulatory is very, very strict as far as the innovation in healthcare is concerned. If it is same for pharma, it is same for startups. We have to keep everything under the regulatory control, and we have to follow all the protocols, all the essentials, tick marks which are mandate as far as the governance is concerned. So regulatory is also something they are considering this as a hurdle, but I consider it as a blessing, because unless you know your boundaries, you will not be able to do a legally correct business. So regulatory is something that also they are missing. The third thing is they are not involving people from different domains. Now what is one more observation is, going solo is perfectly fine, but also you need to have a good co-founding team, the core team, which should be a blend of marketeer, which should be a blend of a marketeer, a good salesperson, a good finance guy, a good medico engineer, and everyone coming together and then building something, because that will give us the fair idea this team is strong and definitely they are going to hit the market. So that is also something, they are working in silos, they are not sharing their ideas. Now these hackathons, ideathons, and all these platforms, consider whenever I'm going as a judge, especially for the judgment purpose or for the competition purpose, they keep it confidential. So one startup is coming and pitching and basically addressing the whatever the issues they are trying to resolve. But there are many other platforms wherein you can openly pitch your idea. Such platforms are very important, and people generally consider that if I'm sharing my idea with someone else will steal it. It doesn't work like that, because idea ek cheez hai, but execution is ultimate. So if the execution is improper, that idea is going to die. So always I tell founders, try to share your idea, try to find like-minded people, try to involve people, take the right feedbacks at the right time, keeping patient at center, and do not cross the lines as far as the regulatory is concerned. And the last problem that they have is from the investor's point of view also, they expect quick wins. So many businesses, you can have 2x, 3x, 10x within 2 years or 3 years, but health business requires patience, persistence, and consistency. So if you can be a patient founder, if you can explain your investors or your people, your team, that we will grow, but it will take time because a lot of processes are there, then only that startup will grow. So these are some common observations that I see.
That was a lot of insight, I guess, for doctors who are exploring entrepreneurship. Now, continuing with our earlier question, what do investors typically look in early stage health tech startups? Like, is there something that they typically look for?
So, Ashwini, this is very important because we have seen many people complaining, founders complaining, I have pitched to more than 200 investors, but no one is listening to me. They just listen to me, but there is no callback, there is no revert to the mail, and there is no feedback given. Why? Because first of all, they do not study the backgrounds of investors, from which backgrounds they are coming, which are the previous investments background, not educational or experiential, but what are the investments they have done before, so that you are able to find that is actually his or her area of interest. So if you are approaching a wrong guy, obviously that person will not be interested in you. Second, strategic investors are also there. Like, I'm working as a strategic investor, in which not only the financial help, but the strategic help could also be one of the important ingredient to become a successful founder. So to pitch to any investor, one thing is whether that problem do really exist or not, whether you have a clarity in the problem solution or not, whether whatever you're offering a solution or a service, whatever, whether that solution has a unique proposition or not. We call it as USP, something different, something which can be your unique selling point, and whether you have a strong founding team or not. And many a times when they pitch, we all know very good slide deck can be prepared using our AI tools like Gamma. But it's not only the pitch deck that we see, we also see whether that founder is able to answer the questions or not. Now many a times they bring only one or two of them, and they are a team of four. Now it's very important for investors to know the team, the backgrounds of the team, the strengths of the team, and how strong they are together as a team, because then only they will understand both the healthcare and the business. Now they also want to see the traction, whether, even if it is small, but it has to be a real traction, and a business model that is not dependent on the subsidies or the hype. There many a times they make tall claims. I'm also going as a due diligence expert with investors. So many a times investors, they are not from medical backgrounds. They literally, take my inputs and, feedbacks, whether this will really upscale or it is just a hype or it's just a tall claim they are making. So it's very important to be yourself. Even if you are not able to give answers, at least pass it on to the co-founder, who should be able to give answers to, from the finance perspective, or from the market perspective, or maybe from the clinical perspective. So it has to be a you should come out as a strong team, so that they back founders, and they also back domain credibility and the resilience that we see in founders. So healthcare innovation, I have said this many a times in many my talks. Healthcare innovation is a marathon, and it's not a sprint. So it's very important to know the background of investors, pitch, be yourself, calm, composed, and approach right guys, and at least show some traction. Then only they will find that interesting, and if they are not investing, they will at least guide you and refer you to the right investors.
So let's say if doctors have some idea now, they're thinking of starting their own venture, can they reach out to you to discuss about the idea?
Yes, absolutely. Recently, Eureka competition is happening, organized by IIT Bombay. So within 4 or 5 days, I could receive more than 80 applications. So I realized that is the huge need gap, and it's only I'm one of the mentors. There are so many mentors onboarded. So can we imagine the amount or the level at which the mentorship is? So I'm always there. Please reach out to me. And mentorship is not free. If you pay peanuts, you'll get monkeys. So consider that part as well. That's also or the topic that we had discussed recently in one of my podcasts.
So thank you so much for that, doctor. Now, as the chairperson of Fempreneur India and part of Weimar, and doctor is an independent director at IICA. So how do you view women's leadership in healthcare and entrepreneurship? Like, and what advice would you give to young women, that is especially doctors, aspiring to lead beyond clinical roles?
Yes. So thanks for highlighting that, Ashwini. Being a woman, I think it's a natural responsibility that we should serve, our community. We know what are the hurdles, what are the challenges as far as the women community is concerned, and women in healthcare itself is a different chapter altogether. So there are many discriminations, there are many discrepancies, not only at the corporate but also in the field. So many a times it has been observed when we used to walk in the hospitals wearing aprons along with our male doctors. Patients generally used to stop us and ask, "Nurse, ye ward number 40 ka?" So basically, for people wearing an apron by a female, they know only one thing, that is nursing. But it is very important to tell the world that doctors, female doctors, they do exist. And this is a scenario wherein people from the illiterate background, generally they do like that. But yes, this is the real mirror of our society. So women in healthcare, they are natural leaders, according to me, from Fempreneur India and also through Weimar. Weimar is also a very interesting concept, wherein women from the mechanical or the civil backgrounds, they are not able to get the leadership positions because they are in minorities. Hardly there is one mechanical engineering background female who is a part of leadership team. Majority of them, they are working in the fields but not at the top positions. So because there is only one female and there are 15, 16 males, so that is what the founder Neelam Pandey is working in Weimar, and I'm very happy to get associated with that. I'm also helping her. And the second is the fempreneur, wherein we encourage women, we encourage more and more leaders, especially doctors. Now here, healthcare is a very sensitive topic. Now here the empathy also is very important, and women, by nature, by their hormones, estrogen, progesterone, they bring a lot of empathy, they bring a lot of balance. They are actually true leaders and good leaders. I'm not here to look down upon the male fraternity. That is not my intention. In fact, I am a huge fan of diversity. So if I see 4 or 5 women coming together building something, I'm not liking that much, because you are not bringing diversity. You should know both the genders, what they are thinking about. Same thing is applying to the male fraternity. If 2 4 men is building something without taking the diverse gender, that itself talks about the mentality and the mindset. So that's like no go for me. So in general, women as a nature, as their origin, they bring a lot of empathy, they are multitasker, they are actually balancing a team, a good balance, and they are also a reason for discipline. And this has been said at various platforms. Many top leaders, women leaders, have said this openly. Whenever there is women in the room, male community generally, they remain disciplined, and they remain within their limits. So that precision in every role and the multitasking by women by nature, that make them very unique and the natural leaders. What we need now is more women at the decision making tables. But now we know, slowly in medicos also. Now I had a batch of 200 doctors, like 200 mbbs students, out of which only 65 were women and 135 were male doctors. Now this is at least at my college, but I know many colleges wherein less than 20% were women. Now all these women really will get an opportunity to make that decision, and sitting at the decision making tables, that is something which we are calling at more and more women to come forward, not only in policy making, not only in pharma sectors, not only in startups, but also in the governance. Our women leaders should be at each and every position, and for that there are many platforms, many communities, many work people are working in different sectors. So my advice to all the women leaders are, first of all, consider yourself as a leader. Every person has that leader inside. You just have to analyze, have to work on it, and more than a boss, try to become a leader. You also grow, but ensure people around you are also growing. That makes you unique, that makes you different, and a great leader. The second thing is, apart from that, work on your skills. Try to be a better version of yourself than yesterday, and try to understand and learn from people. Apart from books, there are a lot many good stories around, lot many people are working in different sectors. We can gain a lot of knowledge and skills developed. So all these platforms, they are giving me this opportunity to help women empower, talking about empowerment, talking about women leadership, and also women entrepreneurship, especially in healthcare. My role in ISCA as an independent director is also very clear. That also gives me an opportunity wherein I go as a board advisor or as a non-executive independent director, wherein we give inputs, we give the strategic insights. We also ensure collaboration and right investments, leading with because there are, again, the women independent directors, the number is very less, but the requirement is huge. Now as per mandate, you need at least one women director in the board. Now number of women directors is also very less in India. So I am also trying to encourage more and more women of that business or that leadership skills to become independent directors, so that we become part of the main decision making tables. And we need to move from participation to powerful representation. That is something that I'm very very passionate about. So this is what we are doing, and becoming a board member or a board advisor, that gives you an opportunity to become a part of the core team without affecting their day-to-day operations, but getting that overlook what's happening in the business, and how you can prevent complications, and how you can keep them in the well regulated manner. So that is a great thing and a great opportunity. I'm very thankful for that.
I guess we have many women who will be really excited to take up the role, but I think many of them don't know the pathway.
Correct.
Like they're so held up with seeing patients, busy with, because they also have to take care of family. Let's say for doctors who are listening to the podcast who are really excited to take up this kind of a leadership role, is there any pathway that you have for them, doctor, where we can connect them to you through the pathway where they have some kind of a finishing school type or a course type? Is there something that's there in structure now?
Yes, yes, definitely. For ISCA, if you go to the website, there are modules, more than 50 plus modules. You have to go through it, give the exam. That could be one of the opportunity. The second, in your day-to-day practice also, or in your circle, or wherever geography you are located, and whatever work you are doing, try to collate, try to collaborate, try to bring something which is useful and innovative in nature. So there are many platforms, including ISCA, and there are many communities like HBA international, as well as within India also, wherein they can get enrolled. They can learn about leadership styles. They can learn about the core of or the importance of leadership, and create that community within themselves. So if you are thinking that I should address some issue, why don't you only become that source of a solution? So that is the message that I want to bring here. So rather than participating, I want the powerful representation of women as leaders.
So thank you so much for your time, doctor. It was a great session. Now, just before I wind up, This is for all the NEET PG aspirants who are looking forward to participate in the upcoming counseling, which is going to kickstart anytime now. Suppose if I have pharmacology in my mind, how will I know this is the branch for me? Like maybe I'm confused between pharmac and one or two other. Do you have some quick tips for them to self-analyze? Yes, this is for me. And is there something that you can share on it, doctor?
Yes. So few things we have to consider. I also was at the same stage, so I can very well relate to what they are going through. And many MBBS students, they approach for the same question that they are getting non-clinical subjects ABC, or they are getting some diplomas of clinical versus pharmacology. What should be the choice? Now, any degree, any qualification is good as far as you are able to exploit that. You should be able to know the best potential of it to extract the most of it. So it's very important to analyze yourself whether, first of all, will you be happy if you keep yourself away from patients, or are you are someone who loves, or for you the true passion is seeing patients. If that is your true calling, pharmacology is not for you. Second thing is, are you very passionate for clinical research or drug research or clinical trials, or adverse drug reaction monitoring, or the fields which will have a larger impact rather than handling one patient at a time? If you are not of that mindset, again pharmacology is not for you. Then for which are the candidates who can actually think about pharmacology? For example, if you want to create a larger impact, if you want to impact millions of lives, if you are comfortable with the diverse set of working within the diverse environment and with the diverse set of people, like a setup of a pharmaceutical industry, that also becomes a clear choice. Pharmacology gives you an opening into the pharmaceutical industry. Now second is, if you are very much into innovation and want to learn about business, digital health, or innovation along with the clinical practice and knowing patient pain points and doctor pain points, if you are very curious and you are able to network beyond your circle and invest in yourself, I think pharmacology is a great subject. Not because I have done pharmac, but I have seen many examples, and people actually are doing very diverse and mixed kind of work apart from monotonous mundane clinical practice. Now most importantly, what we want to understand is pharmacology also, when we talk about pharma industry, there are some roles which requires traveling. For example, medical affairs. Now many people, they ask me, I'm not very comfortable in traveling, I have my kids, or some are saying because I personally don't like very to travel a lot. So for them, medical affairs should not be the choice, but there are other options, like for example pharmacovigilance. Now pharmacovigilance, you have to work from your home, and you have to work on the desktop. Now the challenge is, some people, they don't want desk job. Now, for them, pharmacovigilance is not the right choice. Maybe medical affairs is the right choice. Now, the third set of people, they are very much, they are book bugs. They love to read. They are into clinical research. For them, there are many opportunities like joining a CRO, starting your own CRO, or working in clinical development, joining industry. So, all these kind of evaluations you want to do. And if you are from a background like me, wherein you have to start from zero and you absolutely have no backup, and if you want to start earning as fast as possible after your MD, pharmacology is the best subject. Why? Because immediately once you join industry, the minimum salary that you draw, MD Pharmac, is between 20 to 25 lakhs per annum. So at least your basic is taken care of, and as you climb up the ladder, as you take more and more projects, diverse portfolios, or change make switches in the companies, or handle more and more therapy areas, or get promotions, your packages also increases. So it is also a very safe and a good option, because by the age you are completed your MD, you are already in a phase ki shadi bhi karna hai, settle bhi hona hai, and between 25s and all. So it's very important for doctors, after studying for 10 years, to have that financial security, and that MD Pharmacology gives you that clear cut fixed salary every month. And if you are trying, if you are passionate for clinical practice, I will suggest, do not opt for pharmacology. And if you are very passionate for the global exposure or working in the global market, maybe if you want to move to Europe or US or UK, so pharmacology, again, being a global multinational companies working in there are many opportunities, and you can work in the global market as well, and you can have that global impression of yourself in the global map. So if you are of that interest or of that skill sets, so pharmacology is the right choice for you. But if you are passionate for patient handling and clinical practice, you should go for subjects like medicine and the other therapy areas, whatever interests you or whatever actually suit your score rank. That is more
Yeah,
important.
thank you so much. I think that was very, very insightful. Brief, I think you just opened the whole opportunities that they have ahead of them. Also, I just wanted to know because as you were telling about the specialty, now let's say when they do MD or MS over here, clinical specialties, they can do DM, MCH, or they also do Royal College exams, fellow exams of different
Yes,
countries.
yes.
If I do MD Pharmac, what are my next options, doctor? Is there any further education plan or
Yes,
is just MBAs, those that kind of management?
yeah. So after MD, you can opt for DM clinical pharmacology. You can also do some fellowships from outside UK or US based, and again you can upscale your knowledge and you can be more niche. You can be more into one particular sector rather than having that hovering over all the aspects of pharmacology. So DM is something. The number of seats are very less, but we have great examples. There are very few DMs, but they are doing very good. They are part of policies. They are working in top institutes, premier institutes like AIMS or ICMR and DCGI. You can also become a policymaker if you are interested. So all these options are open if you are a clinical pharmacologist. You can also work as a scientist in ICMR. I know few DMs. Those are good friends. They are working as scientists in ICMR and they are part of core government projects because they were DM. So they were preferred over MD candidates.
So thank you so much for that insight, doctor. It was really great having you today. And I guess it was a kind of, I think, knowledge overload session because we spoke about investments, we spoke about business, we spoke about pharmacology, we spoke about so many things. It was very interesting for me as well compared to other podcasts because that was all more towards clinical specialities, global opportunities. This was something different and very insightful. Thank you so much again for your time. It really means a lot, you being here and giving your knowledge, sharing information with all the aspirants here. And for all the doctors who are looking forward to, or who even have a thought of setting up a business, or should I get into business? What should I do? Whatever thoughts you have in regard to business or in regard to pharmac or any question. Now you've seen the podcast, you know what doctor is, you know how doctor can support you. Anything that you have, doctor is available to talk to you. You can book a session with doctor on gocampusworld.com. Details will be mentioned in the description below. The direct link will be given. You can go ahead, book a session, and have a great mentorship session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashwini. Thank you, Go Campus, for inviting me. And I had a wonderful time with you. You're a great host, and I believe our today's conversation will ignite few minds and young, talented minds. And let's hope for the best time for medics to come. Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
doctor.
having me here. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
thank you so much for your time.